get to the circuit boards really easily, and just installing switches and making parts of the circuit touch where they're not supposed to, and it ends up, anything that makes sound will start making some weird screechy fun sounds when you do that. And if you can get the right toy and the right amount of add-on stuff to it, you can start to tweak it to it be a usable instrument. Usable, air quotes, big time.
That's a relative term.
Basically noisemakers that you put a lot of money and time into that are just little children's toys.
Do you see a running theme here?
Yes. I tend to waste a lot of money on hobbies.
Experiments.
And waste is the wrong word. I invest a lot of money in my hobbies.
So my favorite story about the circuit bending thing was, it's very easy to forget that he has like these you still have them, like these tubs of toys. Yeah. So when we moved in together for the very first, our very first place, we all took all our crap and put it in areas or whatever, and we were like, oh, I'm going to lay down and go to sleep. So in the middle of the night you hear, and I was like, what up? Someone's breaking in, and it was like this box of random bizarre toys, and one wouldn't shut up. And
some of them didn't have off switches. So, every once in a while, just two parts would connect and would turn on and just start making noise in the box.
And you're just like, why? It's 4 a.m. and I don't understand what's going on.
I was like, just leave it.
It'll be fine. You had promised me that the batteries would wear out, but this one was apparently it was just like. So that was great. It's a good experience. Luckily, I stuck around.
Yeah. Well, tell us about what. Actually, we'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
All right. So, your hobbies, your ideas were experiments, and at no time did you think that there was a way to make a living with those?
Not really.
Or did you try?
I never really tried, so I couldn't say whether, at some point they were. I mean, I always looked into things like I said, I was really, really into records, so I would, talk to people about, what are the economics of starting a record distro, and everyone's like, no. You're not going to make any money. And I was like, well, I don't care about making money. You'll care about making money when you have a warehouse full of records you can't sell. And I was like, so things like that. I guess I never always had these ideas and was looking for ways to turn them into businesses or anything, but just never could find the right thing to follow up on, I guess.
Gotcha. At what point in college did it occur to you, or what was it that made you decide to go into journalism?
I had a project for a history class about researching newspapers from the day you were born. And I went through and found, this was 2000 or so, so I went back and found the microfiche for all these things and put it in the machine and was searching through all these things and just was amazed by, the language used in 1981 about, just the culture and how it shaped the way people thought about the times, basically. And so it got me obsessed with reading about newspapers. So I would, just started digging back further and further and seeing how, language changed from, the 80s to the 70s to the 60s and on back. And then, so I was like, found that was a really interesting course of study. So I went into the journalism program and, just found it fascinating the way people communicate.
Writing styles change, and
writing styles,
the slang, the whole wording of things.
Exactly, and how it's used by how it can be used against people or for people, and what that says about us as a culture. I thought it was really fascinating. So I loved being a journalist for the few years I got to do it.
You traveled, or did you just follow up on stories? What kind of journalism?
So my specific area was copy editing. So copy editors are the ones who proofread the paper, but also write all the headlines, lay out the paper, do all those fun those things. Most of it is following up with reporters or fact checking. So there was quite a bit of making late night calls to sources or to reporters directly, waking people up at 12:30 right before the paper goes to print. Yeah, they're not happy about that. But
like, is this full of crap? Are you full of crap in this article or what?
Yeah.
And they're like, stop calling me.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah, I got to work at a few places. Our college newspaper ran daily. It was pretty cool.
What?
Yeah,
daily?
daily for during school days. So we got to operate like a real paper there, and that was really cool. And then I had an internship up in Tallahassee, down in Tallahassee from here, I guess. But working at a real paper for a bit, and then
was there ever in your mind that you'd move on to a bigger paper and that the New York Times was going to look for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was specifically looking for ways to get tied into the New York Times organization. So the New York Times owns quite a few different papers.
Okay.
So at the time, I think Bradenton's paper was part of that organization, Miami. So I was actively looking for ways to get into a larger organization where you can move up to wherever. I worked for Knight Ridder papers for a little bit. They're no longer in existence. Most of these papers, there's very few companies that still own newspapers now. New York Times being one of them. But and the whole industry started to collapse right about then. So they were outsourcing copy editing jobs to India. They were consolidating copy desks that should have been 10 people is down to 2. There were just no jobs.
Right.
So it was the perfect time for you to get into that industry, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
But there was a lot of move to blogging.
There was.
And that never was not appetizing to you?
No. Well, it should have been. Let's put it that way. I was a bit of I don't know, not a technophobe, I just didn't invest my time into computers or learning about, the way to use computers to communicate effectively.
Sure.
To me, most of my, I put so much investment into the analog portions of my life, vinyl records, newspapers. I still got the newspaper up until a couple of years ago. I used to love just the the tactile aspect of opening it. And then before I kind of went all in on digital, now everything is on the tablet and everything's on my phone, and we don't have paper anywhere pretty much. Man, the thing I thought I was going to be doing, looking back, it's silly, I guess. But but at that point, when you're 21, 22, and you've now invested the last 3 years of your life or so into
feels like a long time
thing that you are convinced is going to be the path you take through the rest of your life, it's a big blow to not be able to do that, or in your head not to be able to do that.
Right.
Obviously now I think there's looking back on it, there were paths into doing that same work just in a different medium.
Sure.
And taking it on yourself and building that yourself. Now it seems pretty obvious that that's what you should have done, but at the time it was like, if you're not in with a news organization, you're just spitting into the wind,
right?
And no one's going to hear this.
Who knows, right?
And you're definitely never going to make any money off of it, right? And now we know that's just not true.
Now it's just part of doing business now, and it's just there.
At the time, I was in a relationship with a woman who was working in the financial industry.
Who's clearly not me, because I would not work in the financial industry.
So, she said, well, why don't you get a job here until we find, something what you want to do. And so, after you get into that and you start getting into corporate culture and raises and, once you stick around for another couple months, then your bonus hits, and then, it's summer, we might as well stick around for this, and that turned into almost 10 years. So
dang.
So there's a cycle of that kind of thing, and tried a few different jobs within that industry and within a couple of different companies, and just never the right fit for me. And, I'm glad I had that experience in a lot of ways, and taught me a lot about managing money and how to invest correctly and investing for retirement and things like that. So it's some invaluable information from all that. But overall, not the best experience working for corporate.
It gives you a lot of hands-on experience on life.
Yeah,
definitely. All right, so Elle.
Yeah.
You're growing up in Tampa.
Yeah.
Visiting Michigan. No.
Yeah.
Yes, Michigan.
Yeah.
And so what are your interests in? Is art one of them, and what type of art is it?
Yeah, art was always a big part of my life. I came from a middle working class family, and my mom had me when she was young, and she was like, I want you to have experiences that I didn't get to have because you're smart enough to do that, and you're my only daughter, so just go and do what you want to do. So it was a very cool and encouraging environment. We didn't have money, but we did, she made sure I got whatever I needed to get done. So when I went off to college, I had a scholarship because I worked really hard in high school, got great grades.
Did you work on your art in school? What type of art were you doing?
Yeah, a lot of it was, I was doing a lot of performance art. And I was also doing, at the end of my high school career, I was starting to get into more like physical form art. And I just wanted to explore that a little bit more, and that was cool. And I found that I had more of a natural talent for that. Just repeating some of the things, childhood coming back and all that kind of stuff. Like when you're a kid, like you said, you draw. Every kid starts out as an artist. You either keep it or you lose it along the way. And I went to college knowing that I'd have to choose, and my mom was like, just do whatever you want to do that's going to make you happy. And I was like, I don't know. All right. So I guess I'll just do this. It sounds great. And I ended up parlaying that into a pretty great career. So I feel pretty confident about my choice. I feel like it's a good choice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're in Florida State in University of South Florida.
Yeah.
And you're doing performing arts, or what are your focus?
Yeah, I got a Bachelor in Fine Arts, and my main focus on paper was photography, so wet lab photography, like antiquated film, a lot of like still photography, whatever. And then at the end of my experience at college, I was doing a lot of mixed media, so a lot of video mixed with different types of artwork. But I mean, BFA is just essentially the beginning of an introduction to every form of art.
Okay.
And I just ended up choosing photography because it felt the closest to what I wanted to do. Plus, the added bonus that I already had family members that had started businesses in that art form. So I figured, I really don't care what happens as long as I get to still keep creating once I actually get into a career out in the real world. So everybody in my family, they're all entrepreneurs pretty much. So my grandfather owns a mechanics garage. My mom did a ton of side businesses. She's a seamstress for a while. And then her siblings all have some form of whatever. And if you take a look at the family, the extended family, there's several photographers in the extended family that, I don't really talk to very much, but they did their own career just randomly. And I pulled up, I think when Facebook became a thing, I showed Jared and was like, look at this. This is genetics in its purest form. A cousin that I hadn't talked to that was a cousin far removed. He had started a photography business. So it's just kind of seemed like it was either it's embedded in our DNA somehow, or we're all entrepreneurs and we hate having people tell us what to do, so we're just going to tell other people what to do for a living. So that worked out really well.
I'm gonna tell other people how much to pay me to let me do what I want to do.
Why not? Sounds great, right? It sounds like living the dream.
Yeah. So you're in college, and are you taking on freelancing jobs in between for stuff?
Man, no, I was not that clever in college. I mean, really, the majority of the time I spent in the fine arts world, doing museum stuff and cultivating relationships with people, so I can tell stories with them and I was really fascinated with crafting a character and then finding some poor soul that would embody that character for me. I could dress them up and put them in a scenario let's do what would it be like if a nun started a band and wanted to do a music video. Let's find someone that would be willing to dress up like a nun, and then let's make a song, and then we'll do a video with it. And so 90% of my day was spent cooking up these like really bizarre storylines and like really, and it was great because 4 years I get to do whatever I want to do, and there were basically no repercussions, and I could just say it's art, and
that's
everyone was like, great, you know.
So, love it or hate it. That's right.
Yeah, and I graduated like right before the economy took a crap. I graduated in summer of 2007. And I was like, oh, I need to find a job. I need to parlay this somehow into finding a job. And I think the biggest running theme in my whole life is there's this the